Hello everybody, my name is the Happy Tao, and this is the second video in the Foxhole tips and tricks series. I apologize if I look a little more scraggly than usual, my beard trimmer has given out today. But back on topic. If you don't know who I am or you didn't watch the last video, I am a Foxhole streamer and player that has been playing the game since about 2017, 2016, since before War 1, and over that period of time, I have learned a lot of things about how to play this game. And some of those things are outdated, some of those things are perfectly relevant to the game's state as it is now. And I wanted to start sharing some of those things with both the new players and some of the veterans who just want to listen to someone yap. For this video, we're going to be going into how to fight on the front line with tanks. Fighting with tanks on the front line can be a little bit overwhelming for some new players who are not necessarily familiar with the way that tanks operate or how to support them as infantry. Just a heads up, this video is probably going to be a little longer than normal. There's a lot of different things that we're going to go over, so grab some popcorn, grab a drink, put me in the background, and enjoy. So, the first thing that we are going to talk about today is the Pedestrian Rule. Now, the Pedestrian Rule essentially makes sure that you don't get run over by vehicles, and that is important because, case in point, when you are on a front line, one of the biggest problems or things you need to look out for is getting run over. Not by the enemy tanks, but by your own. Treat the tank that you are fighting with as having sections, quadrants around it. Certain areas, certain sections are safe to be in, certain sections are not. For example, the left and right of a tank are usually pretty safe because at no point can Stousley in this tank here immediately go left and float into my body. He can turn, but by then I'll already know that he's turning, so I can move with him. Now, on the contrary, the back and the front of the tank are always the scariest. You do not want to be in these sections, because here's what will eventually happen, is that, let's say, Stousley sees a shot on a tank, and he is scoped in, his commander is yelling things at him, the driver is going to drive up to get a shot on that tank. If you are where Stousley is now, you are going to be flattened. If a tank thinks it's going to get a kill shot on another vehicle, that's a big win for the front line, and the loss of one soldier is not going to be a big problem. So, that's why you don't want to be in front of the tank. You don't want to be directly behind the tank, because let's say Stousley realizes that there is a Stygian bolt coming up. Big 94.5 millimeter cannon can blow up light tanks in one hit. Stousley, or whoever is the commander, sees that Stygian and shits himself, and that tank is going to get the fuck out of dodge. And when that tank gets the fuck out of dodge, if you are behind it, it's going to roll the fuck out of you. So, what you might be asking at this point is, okay, Tao, I can't be in front of the tank, and I can't be behind the tank, but I can be on the left and right. But what if I need to cross? Am I just blocked from crossing? Well, not quite. What you can do is, if you need to get to the other side of the tank, let's say there's an infantry rush. Let's say 3 collies come from the west side, and they're screaming profanity at us, and they're shooting, and they're just being a general nuisance. What you can do to make it so that you do not get run over by the tank is by first going south and give yourself a little bit of berth. And the goal here is that you are giving the tank space to retreat, but you still have space for yourself to move across the lane. Conversely, let's say you want to move ahead, do the same thing. Get some berth, give some space for the tank, then you can move to the right, and nobody is going to get run over. Now, there is something to keep in note when it comes to the pedestrian rule. Different vehicles have different hitboxes. Certain vehicles are a lot easier to run over infantry accidentally in. certain vehicles are very hard to run over infantry accidentally in. Tanks are sort of a middle ground. I mean, it's not too hard to get flattened by them, but you usually have enough time to back away from them before they turn you into a pancake. Now, on the opposite end of that spectrum, we have the half-track. And this one was donated to us by an unlucky colonial who did not pass the license check. What's interesting to note about half-tracks is they have a slightly larger impact hitbox than they would look like. So it is a lot easier to get run over and killed by a half-track if you are close to it. So, what does that mean for you? If you are using the pedestrian rule with half-tracks, essentially you just want to expand the space around the half-track that you're moving. So when, let's say, if the tank, I could be maybe about this close to the tank. For a half-track, you want to maybe expand that to about here. And then the same thing goes for the front and back berths. You maybe run a little bit up to here instead of being here with the tank, and you should be able to safely maneuver while the half-track can do its thing. Okay, so that is the pedestrian rule. Again, the pedestrian rule. Stay on the sides of the tank. If you're going to cross behind or in front of a tank, then make sure you give the tank space so it can still maneuver and nobody ends up dead. All right.
Never stand directly behind it either, because the momentum. We will not be able to back up.
Oh, yeah, that's an excellent point, too. Stousley has brought up a really good point here, and you know what? I'll illustrate it actually with my body. One thing that is extremely dangerous for tankers is if they get body blocked. And you might be asking, Tau, it's a 500-ton fucking tank. How the fuck is it going to get body blocked? Well, let me show you. Stousley, try and drive backward. You see, if the tank doesn't have momentum to get going, it cannot run over a player. Which means Satan and I are completely safe in this circumstance. But, it means that our tank can't get away, it can't maneuver, it can't move up to engage, and you don't want to do that because the tanks are your friends. They want to help. They want to blow up things for you. The next thing we're going to talk about is what sides and flanks you should be watching as an infantryman if you want to move up and push with your tanks. It might not be readily apparent the ways that you can help a tank when it's in combat. Tanks are often, very imposing things that come onto the front line. They start blowing everything up, and you're like, oh, okay, we won, we've done it. Not the case. The tank is actually extremely vulnerable against certain types of units, namely any infantry with an AT that they can pull out of their fucking ass at pretty much any moment. The main places that an enemy soldier is going to try and rush the tank is going to be from the sides and the corners. And this is either going to be with sticky bombs or rocket launchers. These 6 spaces are the place you want to be as an infantryman, or the directions you want to be as an infantryman to properly protect your tanks. This changes a little bit depending on what you're defending the tank from. Let's say you're an infantryman and you're watching for sticky grenades. And you think you're doing a pretty good job. You've got the back covered, you've got the side covered, you've got the front covered. But then, all of a sudden, you hear a pop. And a rocket comes screaming in and slams into the tank from the left side. And suddenly, the tank now has to fall back and repair. And the infantry is left out there against maybe their own tank line. And suddenly, the enemy tank line has nothing stopping it from moving up and blowing up the infantry one by one. So this brings us to a topic that I think is very important whenever you're working together with other people in Foxhole. Now, it works especially well for working with tanks as infantry, but you can apply this to pretty much anything. It is screen, communicate, engage. Let's break this down a little bit because there's a little bit more to each of these. There's a little bit more to each of these steps than we first talk about. First, screening. Now, the way I like to set up a screen is to have a 6-person squad. Nothing too crazy, nothing too big. And I usually keep people in the top left corner of the tank. I keep people in the top right corner of the tank. And then I keep 2 people on the back right corner and the back left corner. And what this ends up looking like is, and I'll draw this on the video, but it's essentially 2 people on the top left, 2 people on the top right, and then 1 person on either side of the tank in the back corners. What this does is that if enemies try to come in from the sides, then you have a force of infantry that's ready to meet them. And if an enemy tries to sneak in from the back, then you also have people that are ready to quickly engage and kill that enemy if they're sneaking around. And usually the way I like to play this is have those 2 people in the back be medics or ammo bearers or other people that generally want to be safer. That way they won't feel like they're being left out by not being on the front. The next step is to communicate. Say, hey, tanker, there's a rocketeer up here. You might want to pull back just a tiny little bit while we deal with him. And then if you're really cool, you'll press H and then you'll put a little look over here while you say that, so the tanker knows exactly where that rocketeer is. And lastly, we'll go a little bit more intricately into the engage part of this aspect. My personal thought is that if you are fighting with tanks in Foxhole, there are 3 different main things that you'll be doing depending on what kind of enemy you're fighting. And first, let's talk about fighting infantry with a tank. What the tank can do, and what most tanks can do, is that they have the ability to one-shot kill most infantry in the game if they get their accuracy right. So if you're facing only infantry, the tank can apply pseudo pressure to that infantry to keep their head down and keep them from popping up and shooting your infantry. Once that's done, once that pressure is applied, your job as an infantry member is to capitalize on that fear created by the tank. Now that their heads are down, you and the rest of your squad can push in, preferably with automatic weapons or weapons that have a good relative gun pressure, and we will go into relative gun pressure in a future video. Preferably you have those kinds of weapons and you push in as infantry, and then once the infantry are killed, the tank can move up. Are you seeing a little bit how infantry and tanks work together here? One pushes up, fights, which opens up space for the other one to push up and fight, which opens up for the other one to push up and fight. Think of the concept of bounding, almost, if you're familiar with that term. And I'll put a graphic in the video to say what bounding is, so you can pause and take a look at it. The second case of engaging, if you're infantry supporting armor, is going to be enemy armor. Now, across the way, we have a half-track, but I want you to imagine that it is another tank, so that maybe this is a even one-on-one kind of fight. Your job as infantry is not necessarily to apply pressure in this situation, but it is to open up opportunities for your tank to confirm and score the kill. This is a good chance to talk about some of the main schools of thought when it comes into how to kill armor on the front line, and there are merits to both. In one camp, you have a group of people that says do as much possible damage to the enemy vehicle in a short amount of time as possible. I'm going to call them the Alpha Strike camp. This is the thought process of taking a bunch of firepower and loading it on one place all at the same time, and essentially waiting for the right moment to put as many guns on the enemy vehicle as possible. If you fall into this camp, then you're probably more of a fan of letting enemy vehicles push up and get a little bit cocky with their ranging, at which point you take all of the rockets and guns that you've had in hiding and fire all at the same time at the vehicle to try and disable them so that they're in a bad place that they can't get out of. This works. This is a really good way to take out lighter vehicles. It does a lot of shock and awe as well, so you can sort of chip away at the enemy's morale if you showcase that you have the coordination to take out one tank just completely off the board at a time and they can't see where it happened from. You also have people that fall into the camp of do a lot of armor damage over time in a battle of attrition so that more of your shots will actually land. One of the best ways to do armor damage is with 20mm weapons like the anti-tank rifle or any of the plethora of anti-tank modifications that both factions get. These anti-tank rifles are really good at doing attrition damage over time. The nice thing about attrition damage is the more damage the armor on a vehicle is, the easier it is to get through that armor. So I might only have, let's say, a 50% chance to penetrate Stousley's tank with this shot. But if the armor on Stousley's tank is damaged, that chance increases to something like 75%. What does this mean for us? What does this mean for our infantry supporting our tank in a battle against another vehicle? First off, talk with your friends, talk with your tanker, and see what they want to do. If they want to do a decisive attack and try and lure the enemy tank in, then what you can do as infantry is move up slightly ahead of your allied tank and find positions to hide in if you have a rocket launcher or other AT. Then the tank can pull back a little bit and the enemy tank will move forward to engage with the rest of its infantry line. Now this can be dangerous because you need to have your own infantry that are ready to fight off their infantry line, but what you can do in this scenario is once the enemy vehicle gets close enough, you can let off your own anti-tank rockets. You want to create opportunities for your tanks. You want to either track the enemy tank, damage their turret, damage their engine, or just do a decent amount of flat damage to the enemy vehicle that it makes it worth it for your allied tank to then push in and deliver either a killing blow, or B, just put a lot of firepower down and see if you can kill the tank through just massive shots. The third thing that you want to do as infantry, if you are supporting tanks, comes in the case of attacking structures. Tanks are special because they have the armor to sit and do consistent anti-structure damage with a relatively low chance of being shot by a lot of these defensive structures back. Let's say there's an enemy base over here and they have rifle pillboxes. The tank is going to focus on blowing up those pillboxes so that our army can move through. But the enemy team is not just going to sit on their ass and let that happen. They're going to send infantry forward to try and take out the tank. So instead of applying pressure or creating opportunities, this is really where your infantry screen is going to come in. You want to set up security around the tank so that you can engage enemy infantry as they are coming up. And that way, the tank can focus doing what it does best and keep blasting the shit out of that enemy concrete. Okay, so we've talked about a lot so far. The main thing that I want to impress upon you is communicate with your tankers. Your tankers are fellow players, and they want to win just as bad as you do. Tankers, communicate with your infantry. There are other players that want to win just as badly as you do. The thing that I want this video, the reason why we're talking about these things, is because oftentimes there can be a lot of discontent fermented between tankers and infantry. Tankers who think the infantry just doesn't care and isn't doing their job, and infantry who see tankers as, you know, high on their high mighty armored horses. But the reality is none of these can work without the other one. If the tankers push but the infantry doesn't, the tankers will get sticky from the side and blown up in 5 seconds. If the infantry pushes but the tanks don't, then they'll, even if you have a human wave, you'll just sort of push up against the enemy's defensive line and kind of be stuck there and then eventually get pushed back. You work together in order to make the magic happen. And that's it. Thank you for staying till the end of the video, folks. I know that this was a lot of information to take in. I haven't quite figured out what the next video is going to be. There's a couple different things we could talk about, but a lot of people have been asking for one that goes into what I see as relative gun pressure and distance control. So if you're a fan of combat styles that are a little bit more focused on rushing in as close as you can and using the fire rate and damage of your weapon to outpressure the other guy, keep an eye out for that video, because we're going to be going into exactly that, and as a bonus, it'll probably be a little bit shorter. Cross our fingers. Anyway, again, folks, thank you for staying for the whole video, and as always, be good to yourselves. I'll see you on the front line.